أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ياسين والقرآن الحكيم إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم تنزيل العزيز الرحيم لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباؤهم فهم غافلون. لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون. إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقان فهم مقمحون. وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون. وسواء عليهم أأنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون. إنما تنذر من اتبع الذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب فبشره بمغفرة وأجر كريم. إنا نحن نحيي الموتى ونكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين. واضرب لهم مثلا أصحاب القرية إذ جاءها المرسلون إذ أرسلنا إليهم 2 فكذبوهما فعززنا بثالث فقالوا إنا إليكم مرسلون. قالوا ما أنتم إلا بشر مثلنا وما أنزل الرحمن من شيء إن أنتم إلا تكذبون. قالوا ربنا يعلم إنا إليكم لمرسلون وما علينا إلا البلاغ المبين. قالوا إنا تطيرنا بكم لئن لم تنتهوا لنرجمنكم وليمسنكم منا عذاب أليم. قالوا طائركم معكم أئن ذكرتم بل أنتم قوم مسرفون. وجاء من أقصى المدينة رجل يسعى قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون. وما لي لا أعبد الذي فطرني وإليه ترجعون. أأتخذ من دونه آلهة إن يردني الرحمن بضر لا تغني عني شفاعتهم شيئا ولا ينقذون. إني إذا لفي ضلال مبين. إني آمنت بربكم فاسمعون. قيل ادخل الجنة قال يا ليت قومي يعلمون بما غفر لي ربي وجعلني من المكرمين. وما أنزلنا على قومه من بعده من جند من السماء السماء وما كنا منزلين يا حسرة على إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم خامدون يا حسرة على العباد ما يأتيهم من رسول إلا كانوا به يستهزئون ألم يروا كم أهلكنا قبلهم من القرون أنهم إليهم لا يرجعون وإن كل لما جميع لدينا محضرون وآية لهم الأرض الميتة أحييناها وأخرجنا منها حبا فمنه يأكلون وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وعناب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملته أيديهم أفلا يشكرون سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون وآية لهم الليل نسلخ منه النهار فإذا هم مظلمون والشمس تجري لمستقر لها ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى عاد كالعرجون القديم لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر ولا الليل سابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون وآية لهم أنا حملنا ذريتهم في الفلك المشحون وخلقنا لهم من مثله ما يركبون وإن نشأ نغرقهم فلا صريخ لهم ولا هم ينقذون إلا رحمة منا ومتاعا إلى حين وإذا قيل لهم اتقوا ما بين أيديكم وما خلفكم لعلكم ترحمون وما تأتيهم من آية من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها معرضين وإذا قيل لهم أنفقوا مما رزقكم الله قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا أنطعم من لو يشاء الله أطعمه إن أنتم إلا في ضلال مبين ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخصمون فلا يستطيعون توصية ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون ونفخ في الصور فإذا هم من الأجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مرقدنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون إن أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون هم وأزواجهم في ظلال على الأرائك متكئون لهم فيها فاكهة ولهم ما يدعون سلام قولا من رب رحيم وامتازوا اليوم أيها المجرمون ألم أعهد إليكم يا بني آدم ألا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين وأن اعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم ولقد أضل منكم جبلا كثيرا أفلم تكونوا تعقلون هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون اصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون ولو نشاء لطمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فأنى يبصرون ولو نشاء لمسخناهم على مكانتهم فما استطاعوا مضيا ولا يرجعون ومن نعمره ننكسه في الخلق أفلا يعقلون وما علمناه الشعر وما ينبغي له إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين لينذر من كان حيا ويحق القول على الكافرين أو لم يروا أنا خلقنا لهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فهم لها مالكون وذللناها لهم فمنها ركوبهم ومنها يأكلون ولهم فيها منافع ومشارب أفلا يشكرون واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة لعلهم ينصرون لا يستطيعون نصرهم وهم لهم جند محضرون فلا يحزنك قولهم إنا نعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون ألم ير الإنسان أنا خلقناه من نطفة فإذا هو خصيم مبين وضرب لنا مثلا ونسي خلقه قال من يحيي العظام وهي رميم قل يحييها الذي أنشاها أول مرة وهو بكل خلق عليم الذي جعل لكم من الشجر الأخضر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون وليس الذي خلق السماوات والأرض بقادر على أن يخلق مثلهم بلى وهو الخلاق العليم إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون صدق الله العلي العظيم.
السلام عليكم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أسألك باسمك العظيم الأعظم الأعز الأجل الأكرم الذي إذا دعيت به على مخالق أبواب السماء للفتح بالرحمة فتحات وإذا دعيت به على مضايق أبواب الأرض للفرج فرجات وإذا دعيت به على العسر لليسر تيسرات وإذا دعيت به على الأموات للنشور انتشرات وإذا دعيت به على كشف البأساء والضراء انكشفات وبجلال وجهك الكريم أكرم الوجوه وأعز الوجوه الذي عنت له الوجوه وخضعت له الرقاب وخشعت له الأصوات ووجلت له القلوب من مخافتك، وبقوتك التي بها تمسك السماء أن تقع على الأرض إلا بإذنك، وتمسك السماوات والأرض أن تزولا، وبمشيتك التي دان لها العالمون، وبكلمتك التي خلقت بها السماوات والأرض، وبحكمتك التي صنعت بها العجائب، وخلقت بها الظلمة وجعلتها ليلا وجعلت الليل سكنا، وخلقت بها النور وجعلته نهارا، وجعلت النهار نشورا مبصرا، وخلقت بها الشمس وجعلت الشمس ضياء، وخلقت بها القمر وجعلت القمر نورا، وخلقت بها الكواكب وجعلتها نجوما وبروجا ومصابيح وزينة ورجوما، وجعلت لها مشارق ومغارب، وجعلت لها مطالع ومجاري، فجعلت لها فلكا ومسابح، وقدرتها في السماء منازل، فأحسنت تقديرها، وصورتها فأحسنت تسويرها، وأحصيتها بأسمائك إحصاء، ودبرتها بحكمتك تدبيرا، وأحسنت تدبيرها، وسخرتها بسلطان الليل وسلطان النهار والساعات وعدد السنين والحساب، وجعلت رؤيتها لجميع الناس مريئا واحدا. وأسألك اللهم بمجدك الذي كلمت به عبدك ورسولك موسى بن عمران عليه السلام في المقدسين فوق إحساس الكروبين، فوق غمائم النور، فوق تابوت الشهادة، في عمود النار، وفي طور سيناء، وفي جبل حورث، في الوادي المقدس، في البقعة المباركة من جانب الطور الأيمن من الشجرة، وفي أرض مصر ب9 آيات بينات، ويوم فرقت لبني إسرائيل البحر، وفي المنبجسات التي صنعت بها العجائب في بحر صوف، وعقدت ماء البحر في قلب الغمر كالحجارة، وجاوزت ببني إسرائيل البحر، وتمت كلمتك الحسنى عليهم بما صبروا، وأورثتهم مشارق الأرض ومغاربها التي باركت فيها للعالمين، وأغرقت فرعون وجنوده ومراكبه في اليم، وباسمك العظيم الأعظم الأعز الأجل الأكرام، وبمجدك الذي تجليت به لموسى كليمك عليه السلام في طور سيناء، ولإبراهيم عليه السلام خليلك من قبل في مسجد الخائف، ولإسحاق صفيك عليه السلام في بئر شياء، وليعقوب نبيك عليه السلام في بيت إيل، وأوفيت لإبراهيم عليه السلام بميثاقك، ولإسحاق بحلفك، وليعقوب بشهادتك، وللمؤمنين بوعدك، وللداعين بأسمائك فأجبت، وبمجدك الذي ظهر لموسى بن عمران عليه السلام على قبة الرمان، وبآياتك التي وقعت على أرض مصر بمجد العزة والغلبة، بآيات عزيزة وبسلطان القوة وبعزة القدرة وبشأن الكلمة التامة وبكلماتك التي تفضلت بها على أهل السماوات والأرض وأهل الدنيا وأهل الآخرة، وبرحمتك التي مننت بها على جميع خلقك، وباستطاعتك التي أقمت بها على العالمين، وبنورك الذي قد خر من فزعه طور سيناء، وبعلمك وجلالك وكبريائك وعزتك وجبروتك التي لم تستقل لها الأرض. صلوات. اللهم صل على
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وانخفضت لها السماوات وانزجر لها العمق الأكبر، وركدت لها البحار والأنهار، وخضعت لها الجبال، وسكنت لها الأرض بمناكبها، واستسلمت لها الخلق كلها، وخفقت لها الرياح في جريانها، وخمدت لها النيران في أوطانها، وبسلطانك الذي عرفت لك به الغلبت دهر الدهور، وهمدت به في السماوات والأرضين، وبكلمتك كلمة الصدق التي سبقت لأبينا آدم عليه السلام وذريته بالرحمة، وأسألك بكلمتك التي غلبت كل شيء، وبنور وجهك الذي تجليت به للجبل فجعلته دكا، وخر موسى صعقا، وبمجدك الذي ظهر على طور سيناء فكلمت به عبدك ورسولك موسى بن عمران، وبطلعتك في ساعير، وظهورك في جبل فاران، بربوات المقدسين وجنود الملائكة الصافين. وخشوع الملائكة المسبحين، وببركاتك التي باركت فيها على إبراهيم خليلك عليه السلام في أمة محمد صلى الله عليه وآله، وباركت لإسحاق صفيك في أمة عيسى عليهما السلام، وباركت ليعقوب إسرائيلك في أمة موسى عليهما السلام، وباركت لحبيبك محمد صلى الله عليه وآله في عترته وذريته وأمته. اللهم وكما غبنا عن ذلك ولم نشهده وآمنا به ولم نره صدقا وعدلا، أن تصلي على محمد وآل محمد، وأن تبارك على محمد وآل محمد، وترحم على محمد وآل محمد كأفضل ما صليت وباركت وترحمت على إبراهيم وآل إبراهيم، إنك حميد مجيد فعال لما تريد، وأنت على كل شيء قدير. اللهم صل على محمد. اللهم بحق هذا الدعاء وبحق هذه الأسماء التي لا يعلم تفسيرها ولا يعلم باطنها غيرك، صل على محمد وآل محمد، وافعل بي ما أنت أهله ولا تفعل بي ما أنا أهله، واغفر لي من ذنوبي ما تقدم منها وما تأخر، ووسع علي من حلال رزقك، واكفني مؤونة إنسان سوء وجار سوء وقرين سوء وسلطان سوء، إنك على ما تشاء قدير وبكل شيء عليم. آمين رب العالمين. يا الله يا حنان يا منان، يا بديع السماوات والأرض، يا ذا الجلال والإكرام، يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم صل على محمد. اللهم بحق هذا الدعاء، اللهم بحق هذا الدعاء، اللهم بحق هذا الدعاء وبحق هذه الأسماء التي لا يعلم تفسيرها ولا تأويلها ولا يعلم باطنها ولا ظاهرها غيرك، أن تصلي على محمد وآل محمد، وأن ترزقني خير الدنيا والآخرة، وافعل بي ما أنت أهله ولا تفعل بي ما أنا أهله، وانتقم لي من واغفر لي من ذنوبي ما تقدم منها وما تأخر، ووالدي ولجميع المؤمنين والمؤمنات، ووسع علي من حلال رزقك، واكفني مؤونة إنسان سوء وجار سوء وسلطان سوء وقرين سوء ويوم سوء وساعة سوء وانتقم لي ممن يكيدني وممن يبغي علي ويريد بي وبأهلي وأولادي وإخواني وجيراني وقرابتي من المؤمنين والمؤمنات ظلما إنك على ما تشاء قدير وبكل شيء عليم آمين رب العالمين. اللهم صل على محمد. اللهم بحق هذا الدعاء تفضل على فقراء المؤمنين والمؤمنات بغناء والثروة وعلى مرضاة المؤمنين والمؤمنات بالشفاء والصحة وعلى أحياء المؤمنين والمؤمنات باللطف والكرمة وعلى أموات المؤمنين والمؤمنات بمغفرة والرحمة وعلى مسافرين المؤمنين والمؤمنات بالرد إلى أوطانهم سالمين غانمين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد خاتم النبيين وعترته الطاهرين وسلم تسليما كثيرا كثيرا كثيرا. اللهم إني أسألك بحرمة هذا الدعاء وبما فات منه من الأسماء وبما يشتمل عليه من التفسير والتدبير الذي لا يحيط به إلا أنت. الفاتحة.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, dear brothers and sisters. All praise to the Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who grants us these beautiful opportunities. And today, alhamdulillah, as we gather on this day of Friday, and again one of those beautiful blessed days of the week that is known as the Sayyid al-Ayyam, the day that is known as the leader of all days, and indeed the day that we await the hastening of the advent of al-Hujjah. We await the advent of the Hujjah, inshallah, that we pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it such that we are able to witness His advent, we are able to witness His blessed radiant face, inshallah, and that when He sees us, He shines upon us with His smile, that we become a source of His pleasure, inshallah, in this world and in akhirah. For the acceptance of our dua, sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali. Inshallah, today we'll have our respected Sheikh Shafiq Hudda who will be addressing today's gathering, today's majlis. Inshallah, we'll move on to the Masail part. So if you remember last week, we spoke about the covering of the body in prayer, right? So we mentioned for the ladies, they need to cover the entire body, even their head and hair. The things that are not necessary is their face, their hands up to below the wrist, and their feet below the ankles. Whereas for men, what is necessary is that they cover from navel to their private parts, and it is better if they cover from the navel to the knees. And we mentioned as well that obviously there's a Islamic perspective of hijab for men as well. There's a nice book that has been penned where he compiles all the fatwa, Sheikh Salim Himji, hafidhahullah, that he compiles these masail of different scholars regarding this aspect. What should men wear in the presence of, again, na-mahram, people who are, who they are permitted to marry, in other words, who are not haram for them, that they're permissible to get married to, in other words, in front of other women other than their sisters, their mothers, and all those women that are permissible for that man to. So how should they be covering themselves? We also mentioned regarding that the same covering for men and women, again, for women, as I just mentioned, the entire body, for the men from navel to knees, that needs to be covered when we do sajda sahu, when a forgotten sajda has been done to make up for that, for tashahud. Inshallah, when we come to the arkan, the pillars of salat, we'll discuss in further detail. I don't want to go over the entire thing, but just one thing that I wanted to mention as well for my brothers and sisters. We mentioned these parts that need to be covered, right? But even though that need to be covered, it does not mean just covered by any cloth. It means truly covered. In other words, the cloth that is being used needs to be thick enough that it is not transparent or it is not see-through, or the person, for example, the parts that need to be covered are not visible through it. All right. So, for example, just use this strip from a children's book, that it shouldn't be thin enough that the person is visible from it, both for men and women. All right. It needs to be covered, those parts. Yes, it should be opaque, ahsant. All right. So I would like to thank Sheikh Salim Himji who had pointed this out, just to make sure that this mas'ala is also clear. And again, for the men, as we mentioned, referring to that book, that in the presence of non-mahram women, men should not, wear something, a see-through shirt. Again, it's the same thing. They should not wear a see-through shirt. If non-mahram woman, all right, it becomes a source of them being deviated towards haram with that intention of lust. So again, these things need to be made sure as well. Inshallah, Allah gives us the opportunity to act upon these teachings, inshallah. So for today, what we'll do is we'll go over the conditions of the clothing. So we know what needs to be covered. Now, the conditions of the clothing. There are 6 conditions that need to be fulfilled. First of all, the condition of tahir. It needs to be pure. The second thing, it needs to be permissible. In other words, you have either it belongs to you, you're the owner, or you have the permission to use it for that purpose, right? So for example, those chadar, or for the sisters, the center has some. You're not the owner, but the center has put it over there so that you can use it if you need to. So again, it needs to be permissible. It needs to be mubah. It must not be made from the carcass or the parts of the carcass meaning of a dead animal, right? Which is murdar, which is najis, right? So something that is made or has parts of the carcass in it, it's not allowed because it's najis. Obviously, it cancels out the first one. It must not be from a predatory animal. So for example, from the fur of a wolf, for example, or a lion, though it shouldn't be from the predatory animal, those animals that prey upon different other animals. It should not be from their. It should not be made from a predatory animal. And based on obligatory precaution, nor must it be from an animal whose meat is unlawful to eat. So for example, the meat for a dog, let's say, it's obviously dogs are najis, but it's also impermissible to eat, right? So it should not be made from the meat of an animal that is also unlawful to eat. And the fifth and sixth combined together, and this is the specific condition for men, that they're not allowed to wear this something made out of pure silk. So that's one thing, that their clothing and prayer should also not be made from pure silk. And it should not be embroidered with gold. Okay, so that is also the condition for men. For women, that's not a problem. Yes?
Regarding number 4, if we have a cloth that's from leather skin, which is from, for example, cow, but we don't know if it's been zabah or not, or it's from.
Excellent. So inshallah we'll go into these specific rulings because that's good for pointing it out. So I'll just repeat the question is that if you have something, for example, a belt, all right, that is made out of leather that you do not know the origin, whether it was slaughtered, it is a halal animal, it's a cow leather, but whether it was slaughtered Islamically or not. Inshallah, we'll address it in more detail, but just to point some things. Some clothings are not considered part of the clothings. So for example, in certain maraji, the wallet or things, it may even in certain maraji, they don't consider the watch to be a part of the clothing. All right? Again, we will delve into deeper. The other thing is to make it, just to make it very simple, inshallah, is that if there is a possibility or probability that it came from a place, for example, where it is slaughtered by Muslims most probably, then you can account for that probability. You don't have to verify that it is, for example, just to give you an example, and my elders might correct me. In India, cows are slaughtered mainly by Muslims, all right? Because other sects, they are respected or revered for that. So then if there is a probability of that sort, then we can deem it to be lawful according to that. Okay. Again, as I said, we will delve in deeper into it. Thank you very much for that question. Sent. All right. Now, the first condition, the purity of the clothing. Right. If on account of being negligent in learning, someone he did not care about learning the ruling, and the person does not know the prayers that were performed were with najis clothes or najis body. All right. Then those prayers that are performed with that are invalid. And for example, urine is impure and he performs prayer with that impurity on it, the obligatory precaution is that the person needs to perform that prayer again. Okay? And if the prescribed time has expired, the person needs to make up for it. So what does that mean in very simple words? The person was negligent. Not that he did not know the ruling, but he did not pay attention to it. He did not pay attention to what the ruling was. He did not try to find it. All right? In that case, he needs to make up for the prayers that were qada and performed in that clothing. And if their time is still there, they need to make up for that prayers. If on account of not knowing the ruling, and this is the case which I was talking about, not negligence, the person did not sincerely know about the ruling and performs with an impure body or impure clothing, and he was not negligent about it. In other words, he did not know the ruling. He is generally, for example, there might be a brother who recently converted, to Shiaism, and he started following someone. So he's trying his best, but he did not know about this ruling, and he started. In that case, he was not negligent that it is not necessary for him to repeat the prayers. Okay, the prayers are valid. Now, so this is before prayer, right? During prayer, if a person starts performing prayer and there's ample time, and during the prayer the person becomes aware that the body or the libas, the clothing, has become impure, and he deems probable that it became impure after he started, meaning it became impure after he had started. So by some process, by something, it became najis during prayer, right? Then in this case, his prayer would not be broken up by washing, became impure after he started prayer. In this case, what should this person do? If the prayer does not break and he is able to wash that part of the body, or he's able to wash that part of the clothing. So for example, I'll take a very simple example. He's praying beside where there's a river body. There's a river flowing and he's able to reach out, so for example, his hand got najis during prayer, that he does not move away from Qibla, those things do not invalidate prayer, do not occur, and he's able to wash it. All right, again, it seems a bit far-fetched now just because things have been developed, but the ruling is as it says, if he's able to wash it, that clothing or that body part, then he should do it. If he is not able to do it, and he can change his clothing during prayer, then he should do it. If he can take off the clothing such that the private parts do not reveal. So for men, example, if their shirt gets off, we know that the area that is covered by the shirt only, all right, they are required to cover from navel to the knees. They take it off. But for women, for example, they need to cover their entire body, all right? And taking it off means that it would unveil that private part. He must, during the prayer, do those things. And if he is not, however, in the event that this would break his prayer, so for example, for the ladies, that if they have to, it would break their prayer, then based on obligatory precaution, he must perform the prayer again. Okay? So for any of these conditions, if it is not possible to, in other words, get rid of that impurity from the body or from the clothes, and there is ample time, there is enough time, they need to pray again. Okay? In the case there is no little time, in that case what they would do is, again, if they would try to do those things, either wash that part, wash that cloth, change it, take it off. If they're not able to, and if nothing else covers the private parts, then and he cannot wash or change the clothing, then they must complete the prayer with that impure clothing. Again, if there's little time, all right, such that if they do not complete the prayer, they will have to perform qada of it. So if there's little time and they cannot do anything about that impurity, then they have to complete the prayer. But if there is ample time, then they have to pray again. Okay? Now, after prayer, if someone is certain that his body or clothing is not impure, and after prayer realizes that it was impure. So they had started, and after prayer, they became certain, this was najis. Their prayer is valid. Okay, they don't need to repeat their prayer. So in the beginning, they were certain, they did not know about it. They said they're certain that it is pure. They prayed, and after that, they realized that yes, it was najis. They don't have to make up, or they don't have to repeat it. That prayer is valid. But for the next prayer, they need to make sure that the body part or the cloth needs to be purified. Okay, inshallah, that hopefully. Okay, forgetfulness. If someone forgets that his body or clothing is impure and remembers it during prayer or after prayer, in the event that his forgetfulness was due to carelessness, so he was careless about it, or heedlessness, he did not pay attention to it, he must, based on obligatory precaution, perform the prayer again. Okay? So for example, he knew it was najis even before starting prayer, but he had forgotten about it, or he didn't care much about it, he didn't pay attention to it. In this case, they need to pray the prayer again. And if the time has expired, then they have to make the qada of it. Okay? Doubt. If someone has a doubt about his body or clothing being pure, so they don't know whether it's pure or impure, in the event they investigate, so they'll have a look at it and they did not find anything impure on it, and perform prayers. But after prayers, they realize that the body or clothing was najis. So again, they had a doubt, they investigated themselves, they did not find anything, they prayed, and after prayer, then they found something. In that case, the prayer is valid. They don't have to make up for that prayer. But for the next prayer, they need to make sure that it's purified. However, if that person did not investigate, so he was doubtful, but he was, it's okay. No, the need for investigation is daruri, it's essential. So if that person, he did not investigate, he was doubtful, based on obligatory precaution, he must perform the prayer again. And in the time that it is expired, if it is qada, then they have to perform the qada prayer. Okay? What if there's not enough water? So if someone possesses only just enough water, all right, that only one piece of clothing, he only has one piece of clothing, and his body and clothing became najis. So both of them became najis, the body and the clothing. And the water is just enough to wash one, either the body or the clothing. Okay? So just to, say that, they possess only one clothing, one libas, and they only have enough water to wash, and the both body and clothing are najis, and they can only wash one of them. In that case, on obligatory precaution, they will wash the body. Okay? And in the case the impurity on his clothing is more than what is on the body, so imagine the clothes are more, have a bigger size of impurity than what is on the body, then they have a choice what to wash. But just to make things simpler, always wash the body first. Right? It makes things simple to remember. Okay, only impure clothing. So someone who does not have any other clothing apart from impure clothing, so they don't have any clothes. Imagine someone had traveled, all right? They go for work and there's not enough time that they would come back, they can change. Or imagine they're in a position where there's no store close by, time is running out. Then they must perform prayers with impure clothing and they don't have to make any qada for it. It's okay. It can happen to many people, for example, maybe truck drivers, for example, they're going long routes or something, or they're in a situation where these are the only clothes that they have, and they do not have time to change or any store to substitute clothes from. Again, if they have the option to remove that najis clothing, as we discussed, they need to do that. If they have the option of washing it, then they need to do that. But in the case, for example, that private parts, that's the only thing, and that's also najis, then they can pray in that ruling. Okay, so you just make sure of all these rulings that we discussed. Is there a question? Right? Okay. Now, if someone has two sets of clothing, and he has a doubt that he knows that one of them is pure, okay, and one of them is impure. So he has only two pieces of clothing. Again, someone who's a traveler, something might have happened that one piece of his clothing became najis. Now he knows one of them is, but does not know which one of them. In that event, if he has sufficient time, he must perform prayers with each of them. All right, so in one of them, he'll pray Dhuhr and Asr. Then in the other one, he'll perform Dhuhr and Asr. But if there's little time, if time is short, then, and he cannot decide based on the probability which one is deemed to be more, or which is the one that might be most probably pure, then in that case, he'll just pray in any one of them, and that's fine. Okay? Again, time is short. See, these conditions, I mentioned them because it's a situation based. It's not jump to any conclusion. All right? It's not like jump to the last stage. We can pray in any clothes. It's fine. No, as you can see, there's a step-by-step approach. And so inshallah, with this, we'll conclude our Masail section for today. Inshallah, we'll go on to some other parts. Next week, for example, just a quick question, just to hopefully intrigue this interest in my young brothers and sisters. Can we pray with clothes that have blood on it? So we covered purity today, right? Any type of blood. Sorry? Dry, okay. So dry blood is still najis, right? Okay. 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 Hassan. So thank you very much for sharing that. So first of all, the blood of a mosquito, is it najis? So if that blood is on your clothes, that's fine, right? Okay. So that's one thing. But there are some blood, as Sayyid mentioned, there are some blood that with it, you're still permissible to perform prayer with it. Exactly. So we discussed this in purification, right? Those animals where the blood gushes out and they're halal, all right? Then their blood, we spoke about that ruling, all right? So ahsant. So with the mosquito, it doesn't gush out that way, right? So in that, for some blood that is permissible, it's still impure blood, it's still najis blood, but prayers with it is permissible. For example, a boil or a wound, all right? And as you mentioned, blood that is less than a dirham, so this size as well, that is also used in Sharia. All right, so again, we'll discuss this in the coming week. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allah. So we'll move on to the Kahoot now. Inshallah, we'll start the Kahoot shortly once our brothers and sisters have joined in. Again, as there are many who have gathered over here and they have hajat in their hearts, that Allah fulfills their legitimate hajat. For those who are sick, for them being bestowed with complete and speedy recovery. For those who are away from their homes, for their safe return back to their homes. For those scholars, maraji' who have been serving the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam for increasing their tawfiqat, for their safety and security, and for the hastening of the advent of Al-Hujjah. And for all of us being considered amongst us as ashab, as ansar, as awan, let us recite the ayah karima 5 times. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. أَمَّنْ يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ 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 اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل. So today's Kahoot is regarding the masail that were covered last week regarding the covering during prayer, right, for men and women. So I think we can begin, yeah? Do you see the sisters joined in as well? Yes. Okay. All right, so inshallah we'll begin. See another one. Bismillah. So the first question. While performing prayers, a woman must cover her entire body. However, it is not necessary to cover her hands below wrists, face, feet below ankles, all of them. Again, this is given the condition, as Sheikh had mentioned last time, that is if there's no na-mahram present in that case, right? So, while performing prayers, a woman must cover her entire body. However, it is not necessary to cover her hands, so all of them, hands below wrists, face, feet below ankles. So, the Kahoot named Autumn is in the lead. The next question. While performing prayers, a man must cover his private parts. However, it is better if he covers his body from, so private parts, that is as mentioned, but it is better, as Sayyid Sistani mentions, that he covers from navel to knees, navel to ankles, shoulders to ankles, neck to knees. So navel to knees, right? Again, as I mentioned in Tawdih al-Masail, he speaks about this particular case where it is better to cover from navel to knees. But again, as we mentioned that ruling, if you recall, the Islamic hijab for men, in that clearly mentioned as today as well, that they need to cover all that parts of the body that might be a sign or might cause someone to look upon them or gaze upon them with the intention of lust, or if they have that, right? So again, would recommend that you read that book to get a better understanding of it, inshallah. All right. So Kahoot named Autumn still in the lead. The next question, true or false? If when performing prayers, one intentionally does not cover his private parts, his prayers are invalid. So intentionally, the person does not cover. Again, this is for ladies, as we said, the private parts means the entire body except the face, the hands, and the feet. So that is true. So Kahoot named Autumn still in the lead. The next question. If the person was negligent in not learning the ruling and did not cover the private parts, he must, based on obligatory precaution, should do what? Perform new prayers with clothing that covers private parts, perform wudu again, perform sajdatul sahw, or perform the prayers again. So the person was negligent in this case, all right, and did not cover the private parts. Then they, based on obligatory precautions, they must perform prayers again. Not that they're exempted from the previous prayers, okay, if the person was negligent. Again, that's the key word here. Sorry?
He has to cover the cloth and then do the prayers.
Yeah, but it mentioned perform new prayers, not the previous one. Okay, yeah. So it said new prayers, like that prayer was complete, yeah. Sorry about that trick there. Apologies. So, all right. So Sister Musaddiqa in the lead. The next question. If someone realizes during his prayers that his or her private parts are visible, he or she must do what? Cover them, and it is not necessary to repeat prayers. They need to break their salat and repeat after covering them. They need to leave them uncovered for this prayer and cover them for the next prayer, or cover them and it is not necessary to repeat prayers. Or it is necessary to repeat prayers. So it's the first one, as most have answered. Cover them and it is not necessary to repeat the prayers. Okay, so during prayer, if they realize that something has opened, unveiled from their private parts, they need to cover and it is not necessary to repeat the prayers. So Kahoot name Autumn back in the lead. And the second last question, recommended precaution. One should not perform prayers with clothing that does not cover private parts in all positions. So imagine if he wears or she wears a clothing that it covers when they're standing, but not in other positions in sajda or ruku'. In that case, yes, it's true. They should not perform prayers with clothing that does not cover private parts in all positions. So that's a recommended precaution. Ihtiyat mustahab. So we have Kahoot name Autumn still in the lead. And then the last question, true or false? Praying in thin clothing where parts required to be covered in prayer can be seen is permissible. Is that true or false? So we discussed it or emphasized it today as well. So it's false, right? That the clothing means, covering means that these parts should not be visible. As we mentioned in the ruling, that even the women should not see it. In the Jami' Tawdi' al-Masail, it's mentioned that imagine if the lady's head is inside her clothing. So for example, in that chadar that she's able to see some visible parts, there it's problematic. So understand that they need to be covered such that they cannot be seen. Okay? Inshallah. So sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala. So for today's Kahoot, we have Miqdad's summer Kahoot name in the third position, Kahoot name memory in the second, and I believe Kahoot name Autumn in the lead. And we have runner-up Spring and Musaddiqa, right? Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And now, without any further delay, I'd like to request our respected Sheikh Shafiq Hudda to address this beautiful gathering. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad.
لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. As Sayyid requested, one salawat upon Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل، نعم المولى ونعم النصير. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين خالق السماوات والأرض، إلها واحدا أحدا صمدا لم يتخذ صاحبة ولا ولدا، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين رحمة للعالمين طه وياسين بالقاسم محمد محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين المنتجبين ورحمة الله على محبيهم ولعنة الله على أعدائهم وقاتليهم وغاصب حقوق حقهم ومنكر فضائلهم مجمعين من يومنا هذا إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه وتبارك في كتابه الحكيم وفرقانه المجيد وقوله الحق: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، إن الدين عند الله الإسلام. صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. Respected sisters and brothers, my youngsters, my elders, Assalamu alaikum jamia wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Actually, I should just say my youngsters because everybody here is younger than me, mashallah. So, khair, alhamdulillah, may Allah reward your youth and your shababiyat. One of the things that I just before, while you were doing the Masail, Sayyid, I just wanted to mention was the usefulness and the importance of the issues that we're learning now. Is such that just 2 days ago, I believe it was, I was in Ottawa and I was with one of the reverts, one of the converts to Islam, and the exact masail that was talking about here about the having najasat on the clothes. The funny thing is that a lot of people, and including ourselves, feel that, oh, if my clothes are najis, I can't pray, my namaz gets qaza, my salat gets qaza. And one of the things that has been highlighted, and one of the things that I've talked to, those of you who have had any of my classes will remember, that there is an emphasis that at all costs salat should not be made qada. That means whether you are moving, whether you have got najasat on your clothes, whether you are najis in your clothes, whatever, in any or almost every situation, to avoid namaz being qada, you can almost do anything at all. Okay, so please just keep that in mind. And so these, as I said, it was quite surprising when I was saying that we are covering these in the Masail. So I'm sure that inshallah some of these people will be coming online. They're from out of our own city. So inshallah this has been something very, very valuable and important for the Mu'mineen. One of the things that I wanted to discuss in today's discussion was one, as we were just we have passed the month of Ramadan al-Sharif. We went through the month of Shawwal. The beginning of Shawwal had Eid in it. And in the Salatul Jum'ah, today being the day of Jum'ah, the day of Friday, we do the ziyarat of the 12th Imam, Imam Sahib al-Amr, Ajallahu ta'ala dhuhurahu al-Sharif. And salli ala. And one of the things we say at the end, just on the very last, amongst the last two lines, فَأَضِفْنِي وَأَجِرْنِي فَأَضِفْنِي وَأَجِرْنِي, that, accept me as your neighbor, make me closer to you. And one of the things that we find is, we're asking the Imam to accept us as his neighbor, as his parosi, as his hamsai, I think they say in Farsi, and even Urdu, if I'm not mistaken. Hamsai? Is that, I don't want to say the wrong thing. And in Urdu, they say diyafa, the one who's the da'if, diyafa is a guest in the Arabic language. And fa'adhifni, make me in your neighborhood, make me amongst your neighbors, is what we are saying. And I wanted to just take a look at that, just a moment of this, that how important it is. Why do we ask the Imam to accept us as his guest? We have to understand that in the month of Ramadan, we had talked about the khutbah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Holy Prophet of Islam had said that during the month of Ramadan al-Sharif, during the holy month, we are the guests of Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is sponsoring a banquet, and we become the da'if, diyafa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We become the guests of Allah ta'ala. And again, this may not really click something that, as I'm going to put everything together in a minute, inshallah, that okay, fine, so this is the banquet of Allah, we are the guests of Allah. Then we come to what the ahadith mentions, going back one step, as to the importance of a guest, and then we'll understand why it is there was so much emphasis on that. Why Allah Ta'ala calls it His banquet, that we are the guests of Allah. Why we are asking Imam Sahib al-Amr that we want to be your guest. Please accept us as your guest. فَأَضِفْنِي وَأَجِرْنِي. And the thing here is that the first, maybe I should do a little bit of a test, is that a little quiz for their general knowledge. Sayyid is going to be testing on the things that he has taught you from the week before, and I will just see how your general knowledge is. If you remember, one time I had mentioned that there was one companion of the Holy Prophet, where the Prophet had first gone to in the city of Medina. He was a cousin of Jabir ibn Abdullah Ansari. Do you remember his name, inshallah? Okay, so this is good. Maybe, you know, where the Prophet's camel had stopped and it wouldn't go any further, and the Prophet actually stayed there? Whichever. The kunya is fine. Abu Ayyub. Abu Ayyub Ansari. And my one test a couple of months ago, so I hope you have not forgotten, was where is he buried? There's a shrine for him. Most people probably don't even go there, sadly. This was the first place that the Prophet had said. The Prophet had made his actual house there when he had first arrived into Medina, Abu Ayyub Ansari. And I just wanted to ask you, remind you, where is his qabr? Where is his grave? Where is his shrine? Sorry? In Syria? Not quite. Quite close, Jay? Thank you. Which city? In Turkey is correct. He is actually in the city, the main city, because not the capital. The capital is Ankara. The main city is Istanbul. And there's a place called Eyüp, E-Y-U-P. And Eyüp actually is the Turkish term for Abu Ayyub. Eyüp. Abu Ayyub Ansari is actually in Turkey. There's a shrine there, a haram there. People go there. There's a very beautiful bazaar there. If you ever go to Turkey and you want to do some shopping, that's a good place to go. But don't go there for the shopping. Go there for the haram, and inshallah you can do the shopping. You know, that was one of the things that a teacher of mine once mentioned. He said there'll be a time coming. And you know, at that time, a lot of things were not understood. But today, we understand things a lot better. When, you know, I'm talking about a time when the Arabian Peninsula was just desert. There was nothing except dates and palm trees there. There was nothing else. And even at that time, the Aimma, one of the Imams, had been quoted as saying that do Hajj for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There will be a time coming close to Akhirul Zaman where people will go to Hajj for tijara, for business. And at that time, it may not have been understood, but if you look at it today, 5-star hotels are there. There's lots of shopping to be done there. People go there to buy things. The petrodollars have caused a lot of issues. But anyways, that's a whole different subject. I don't want to digress from what I want. I have to keep in mind our time for Maghrib as well. While we're on the issue of general knowledge, one of the companions that I've spoken about very frequently, one of the greatest for whom Amirul Mu'mineen said, that X is for me what I was to Rasulullah. And I want you to tell me, inshallah. Imagine Amirul Mu'mineen says that so-and-so, X, is for me what I was for Rasulullah. So you can imagine how important this personality is. Jazakallah, Malik Ashtar. And of course, you know, I used to refer to Janab Shahid Qasim Sulaimani as the Malik Ashtar of our zamana, of our era, as is Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah and various others. So my next question, before I come back to Fa'adhifni wa ajirni, you know, as the guest of Allah, where is Malik Ashtar buried? And again, very few people know this, and even those who know it will not be able to take you to his grave, to his qabr, to his haram. Sorry? Which city in Egypt? No. Pharaoh is buried there. Actually, I shouldn't just say Pharaoh. Hazrat Nafisa is there. Hazrat Sayyidah Zainab Ra's al-Hussein are there. In Egypt, which city is Malik Ashtar buried? As I said, most people don't. Now, again, keeping in mind the narration, Malik Ashtar was sent by Amirul Mu'mineen to Egypt to be the governor. Muawiyah managed to basically arrest him and sent a whole swarm of people to arrest him and basically poisoned him, killed him, as he had done with Muhammad ibn Abu Bakr and various others. But anyways, the haram or the shrine of Malik Ashtar is in a city, and I probably wouldn't have known this myself unless a friend of mine who was one of our IHS cabinet members had informed me, because he was living in Egypt. And Malik Ashtar is actually buried in, in Arabic or in English? In English it starts with an A. In Arabic it starts with an alif. Well, no, but it's a whole different, the wording is quite different. Like Cairo is Al-Qahira, Al-Qahira. Cairo, yeah, so it's a completely different letter. The place that it's It's a very famous city in Egypt. Don't say Sharm el Sheikh. Sharm el Sheikh is a resort with beaches and halal and haram there, but I don't want to talk about that. We'll talk about another city. It's actually more in towards the inland. So I think general knowledge is important as well. I'm sorry to say that I'm taking only a few minutes of the time. I will still stay within my time. And the reason why I'm bringing this out is, unfortunately, I should say, sadly, although I have been to Egypt about 5 or 6 times, and I've been to Sayyidah Zainab Ras Al Hussein Al Azhar, which was actually a Shia-founded university, I have not been able to go to this city simply because of the distance. The city is called Iskandariya. Iskandariya, or in English, it's called Alexandria. I think it's Iskandar or Iskandariya. I'm not, Iskandariya, right? So I was correct, inshallah, astaghfirullah. So, and in English, it's Alexandria, okay? And it's about, I thought it was about 4 hours from Cairo, but I was told it's a little less than that. Okay, one salawat upon Muhammad and Ali Muhammad, please. And these people were supposed to have been guests of the residences, but anyways, that's why the topic came out, and I wanted to just share a few things with you. So coming back to what we were saying, the importance of being the guests of Allah, the importance of asking the Imam, is because there was one prophet who was known as Abu Adyaf. The one prophet who was known as Abu Adyaf, the father of guests. He was actually amongst the Anbiya. He was the first one who put so much emphasis. Amirul Mu'mineen has actually said this, that Abu Adyaf was so-and-so. He would put so much emphasis on guests that it was narrated that rarely, if ever, he had a meal alone. If he couldn't find a guest that particular day, he would go walking for 2 miles, up to 2 miles. You can imagine for a moment how far that is. If you were to say that 2 miles is basically from here, our center here, up until the highway, where the highway begins, imagine walking that distance to try and find a guest to come and have your meal with you. And we've got many narrations and episodes about how this particular prophet, which prophet am I talking about? I'm sure that you will easily know. Abu Adyaf, Hazrat Ibrahim. One salawat upon Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. I should ban the 2 Sayyids from giving answers, inshallah. Jazakallah, khayli mamnoon. That is correct. Hazrat Ibrahim was actually the first. So if you look at the line of the Anbiya, Hazrat Ibrahim came much later, but this was the first prophet that emphasized the importance of guests so much that he would not eat a meal without that. And there's a number of narrations about that, which I don't want to get into right now until I finish this. And if we have time, then I will share those other little stories with you, inshallah. So Hazrat Ibrahim used to emphasize that. Why? The Prophet of Islam has been quoted as saying that the guests are the beloved of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When a guest comes to your house, they are the beloved of Allah. So if somebody does not like guests, it is as if they don't like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the hadith, the narration of the Holy Prophet, and Sheikh Muhammad Khalfan in his book, The Divine Banquet, actually gives you the reference for this and says, anybody who hates guests, it's as if they hate Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And because they hate Allah, Allah Ta'ala hates them as well. So this is, there's a chain of narrations which I don't want to go into detail right now, but I can show it to you afterwards if you want to see it. So there was a lot of emphasis on having guests, inviting people. And in the month of Ramadan, we are told that we can protect ourselves from the fire of Jahannam by inviting somebody for iftar, by inviting a guest for iftar. And even if that iftar means giving them a glass of water and 1 date. Now, keeping in mind that in the early days, dates were considered to be a very, very staple food and a very inexpensive food. Okay? Today, dates are actually, if you go to the stores here, they are very expensive. But that is why, we say at the time of Zakatul Fitr, or the time of Fitr, that if you eat dates, your Fitra will be about $20. If you eat normal, rice and wheat and whole wheat, then your Fitra can be in the neighborhood of $12 to $15, inshallah. But if you are eating dates or pistachios on an ongoing basis, your Fitra will be a lot more than $10 or $12. So what the emphasis was that even if you do it simple, but give them, because the guest becomes your responsibility. And there's a hadith of the Holy Prophet of Islam sallallahu alaihi wasallam that says that Allahumma jazakallah khair, that your guest is actually your guide towards Jannah. Your guest will take you to Jannah. to paradise. So that means that the Prophet was emphasizing that when you have a guest at your house, that guest is inshallah your ticket, you can say, or at least a speedy passage or an easier passage towards Jannah, towards paradise. And so the importance of the guest, Mawla has said, is that I like to have a guest, I want to have my meal with a guest. And one time Amir al-Mu'mineen was actually crying, he was upset. And the people used to see the Imam crying when he would do his du'as, when he would do his supplication, but this was a different kind of cry. And he was asked, he says, Ya Ali, why are you upset today? Why are you so upset today? Mawla replies, it has been 3 days, I have not had a guest in my house. I hope, of course, it's not the Imam is giving us a lesson. I hope Allah Ta'ala is not upset with me. Yani, Allah Ta'ala, if you don't have a guest, I'm not trying to get any dinner invitations, don't get the wrong idea. I'm just giving you a narration on what the hadith have said, inshallah. So the Imam was saying that, perhaps Allah, if 3 days pass and nobody comes to your house, nobody has been invited and has come to your place, that perhaps there is something that is needing to be redone and what have you. So we have been told that there is an importance there of the guests in Islam, that they are like our bonding or our correlation with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If we love our guests, we are actually loving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If we treat our guests, because when a guest comes to our house, we try to make it comfortable for them. They bring barakah, blessings into the house. When they leave, they take any difficulties from our house. We had mentioned this in the month of Ramadan, that's why you've noticed I'm not going into too much detail. And so when we as the host try to look after them and treat them well and give them what they will enjoy, what they like, then that lets us understand why we want to be the guests of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as in the month of Ramadan, for example, and why we're asking fa'adhifni wa'ajirni, fa'adhifni wa'ajirni. Mawla, I want to be your guest. Now you can understand, because if Mawla has accepted us as his guest, he will make things comfortable for us. He will make things, inshallah, that ticket going towards the closest to Allah, being averted from any of the punishments and the difficulties, that will be the end result for us. So this is one of the reasons why there was so much emphasis on being a guest of the Imam, being a guest of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, being a guest of the Holy Prophet, because then they become our host, they become our caretakers. They will make sure we are comfortable, because one of the things that we look at in our own lives, my dear sisters and brothers, my youngsters, one of the things that we see in our life, our sins prevent us from getting to these certain heights that we have. And we are always wanting and looking for shortcuts, express ways of getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah ta'ala gives us these opportunities how we can make ourselves, inshallah, better, closer to Allah Jalla Jalaluhu. And so when we look at how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given this emphasis, one time, the Prophet of Allah, Hazrat Ibrahim, Khalilullah, the friend of Allah, at one time he invites a guest over. They are about to start their meal. He says, let's say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And of course, everyone knows Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim means I begin with the name of Allah, the most merciful, the most compassionate. One of the ways that we must start not only our meals. We have been told in the hadith that every action that you perform, whether it's going to school, going to work, getting in your car, getting out for a walk, anything you do, if you want that action to be blessed, start with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And sometimes I even joke with my parent friends. And even if you're filling up gas, you're going to the grocery store, start there with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And every action that has got barakah, every action that becomes legitimate is something that starts with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And so when the Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam says, the man says, I don't believe in God, I'm an atheist. So Prophet Ibrahim was a bit upset, disheartened. He says, okay, you know what? Thank you very much. You can go. You don't have to have your meal with me. The man says, okay. He says, you brought me here. I didn't want to come here anyways. You brought me. You insisted I come and have the meal. He gets up and he leaves. As he leaves, Prophet Ibrahim, in this disheartened state, is about to eat the meal alone. And a voice comes from the heavens. He says, Ibrahim, where is your guest? Where is your guest? Ibrahim says, Ya Allah, he didn't believe in you. So I told him he can just go away. I don't need to. Allah Ta'ala tells him, He says, Ibrahim, for 50 years I was feeding him. I didn't tell him to believe in me. One meal you couldn't have with him. Which tells us that not everybody will believe. Not everybody is on the same boat. Not everybody is on the same wavelength. He says that Allah Ta'ala tells him that, I have fed him for all these years. I never asked him to believe in me. So one of the things that Allah Ta'ala reminds us of is that, when, for example, we're helping somebody, we're inviting somebody, or we're feeding somebody. Because a guest, all these are inclusive. Sometimes we have people on the street, they might be homeless, they might be poor. If we give them a meal, we don't have to ask them, do you believe in God? Pray for me. Of course, you can do that. Most of the people I meet, they always say, yeah, pray for me. God bless you. Alhamdulillah, that's a prayer. You never know whose dua might help us, inshallah. But we don't have to ask them, do you believe in God or not? If you're giving them a meal, if you're giving them food, this is something we learned from the life of Hazrat Ibrahim. There's always lessons that we can take. And if you give them, a sandwich or a shawarma or a donor or something or another, we don't need to ask them, do you believe in God? I often, people have gone to an extreme and said, yeah, but what if we give them food and they have energy and they go and commit a sin? We do tafsir bi-rai like that. Okay, we believe that we are thinking this. Or what if I give them, $1 or $5 and they go and they buy drugs with it? One of the things to remember, if somebody is asking you for help, it is your prerogative. You don't have to help them. It's not wajib. There's a hadith of Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salatu wasalam, whereby Mawla has said that when somebody comes to you for help, it is your prerogative. If you don't help them, you're not committing a sin. You're not committing a sin. But if you do help them, and they use it for something wrong, that is not your responsibility. The only time it's your responsibility if you willingly, knowingly give money to somebody, knowing that they are an open sinner. Okay, so there's a difference between the two. One is that you don't know what they're going to do with it. They will, inshallah, buy food with it. They might be able to live. Maybe they'll take it for their children. We don't know. And if somebody is an open sinner, that you know that they're living or staying near a bar and they're going to take that $5 and go inside that bar, or that is a different situation. But your responsibility becomes to help, regardless of whether they are a believer or not. One time, this is the last story. What time is Maghrib? I don't know if I have time for one more very short story. Bi-idhnillah. I don't want to. Okay, 9:20. Okay. So one time, Hazrat Ibrahim, as I said, that after those idols had been smashed, I don't want to go through this because I'll use up a lot of time. But the idols had been smashed. There was an understanding that this is probably Ibrahim who has smashed these idols and left the hammer by the big idol. So anyways, long story short, Namrud, the accursed Namrud, had sent a group of people to go and look for Ibrahim and arrest him. So and in the meantime, Prophet Ibrahim was out in the market, in the bazaar, looking for somebody to have dinner. So he saw a group of 2 or 3 youngsters, young boys, standing around looking this and that. He says, why don't you come and have a meal with me? So they came and had a meal with Hazrat Ibrahim, and Hazrat Ibrahim says, thank you for accepting my request, thank you for being here, you solved my problem, I wanted to. So these youths, after they finished eating, they said that we also have a problem. He said, what's your problem? He says, we are looking for Ibrahim. We have to arrest Ibrahim and basically take him to Namrud. So Prophet Ibrahim says, well, your problem is also solved. You solved my problem, I have solved your problem. He said, what did you solve? He said, I am Ibrahim. They looked at him. Now, they just had his meal. They just, So Prophet Ibrahim says, okay, take me. They said, we can't take you. He says, why? He says, we are kafir. We are disbelievers. We are followers of Namrud. But we are not disloyal. In Gujarati and Urdu, they say namak haram. Namak haram means you've eaten somebody's food and you stabbed them. He says, we are kafirs, but we are not this. We are not betrayers. So the Prophet says, okay, now what's the problem? He says, well, we've eaten your food, now what do we do? The Prophet Ibrahim says, I'll tell you what. You want to balance it out? Just prostrate before my God. Prostrate before Allah. Just say, Subhanallah, praise God, and we will call it a day, and I will come with you and you can arrest me. They all go into sajda. They all go into prostration. Prophet Ibrahim at that time, because this is the only way that they can balance it out. Prophet Ibrahim then lifts his hands up towards the heavens. He says, Ya Allah, I have managed to bow their heads. Ya Allah, you bow their hearts. La ilaha illallah. I have bowed their heads. Their hearts are still not on the same page. I have bowed their heads. You bow their hearts. And eventually some of the narrations mention that they became believers. Hazrat Ibrahim was not arrested by these people, he was arrested by others, but the narration, then there is a little bit of a gap there. But what I wanted to emphasize in today's discussion was that inshallah, this is an opportunity Allah has given us, and then we are also asking on the flip side to become guests of the Imam. فَأَضِفْنِي وَأَجِرْنِي. The day of Jummah and that ziyarat of the Imam is a beautiful ziyarah. Inshallah, maybe with these Friday night discussions, I will try and take a look at little clips in that ziyarah that are very, very important, very profound. There's another, I don't want to start a thing that I can't begin, but inshallah in another discussion we'll take a look at some of these small translations of various parts of the ziyarat of the 12th Imam, and inshallah we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive our sins and forgive our shortcomings, make us closer to Him inshallah, and make the path easy for us to follow inshallah, make us the true followers of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad alayhi wassalatu wassalam, and inshallah make us salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad, and make us closer to Him, inshallah. One of the things that I'll just close with, that when the 6th Imam was asked, what is the best deed we can do on Friday, on Jummah? From, after we have finished our Jummah prayers and everything, Maghrib time is going to be coming close, inshallah. The Imam says one of the best amal to be done on the day of Friday, after your Jummah prayers are done, after the time for Jummah is done, is reciting salawat upon Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. This is a way of getting great barakah from Allah and a way of getting forgiveness of our sins. So we ask Allah Ta'ala to give us the tawfiq and the ability to do that, and to hasten our Imam, inshallah, for Friday is the day dedicated to the Imam. One salawat upon Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. If we can please remember our marhumin with the Surah Fatiha. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Rahman ar-Rahim. Maliki yawmiddin. Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'een. Ihdina as-sirata al-mustaqim. Sirata alladhina an'amta alayhim. غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. صدق الله.